Hey, Anton,
Yeah, Margaret?
you know what people don't talk about enough?
What?
How Felice focuses on status so much in that one scene. I think you know the scene I'm talking about. When, when she's touching herself, but has a blatant disregard for how uncomfortable Wilhelm looks in all of those pictures that she's using.
I love that was like probably one of our longest cold opens ever, but it's iconic.
Welcome to People Don't Talk About Young Royals. I'm Margaret. My pronouns are they, them.
And I'm Anton. My pronouns are he, they.
And we're people here to discuss the show our friends are sick of hearing us talk about.
If that sounds like you, stick around. If your friend sent you this podcast out of a desperate attempt to get you to watch Young Royals, take this as a sign.
Go watch Young Royals and then come back to this podcast.
Margaret, what are we talking about today?
Today we will be having a character discussion of Felice in Season 1, Episode 1, having decided to, as we say in this podcast, assassinate her.
Woohoo!
Woohoo!
Before the episode's disclaimer, Editing Anton has a cheeky little update for our listeners.
Ooh.
The amount of released podcast material, as of publishing the previous episode, Character Assassination, August the Clueless, has now surpassed the runtime of seasons 1 and 2 of the show combined, which is the entirety of released show content at time of recording. We're not even done talking about the pilot.
Holy shit. Oh my god.
And it's not even slightly past 1 and 2, we blew past 1 and 2.
Damn.
And a little look ahead for the listeners, because there's honestly absolutely no way season 3 gets released before we surpass the length of what all 3 seasons are going to be combined, and so that's going to be based on a projection.
Yeah.
Like an estimation. If basically my current estimation is if season 3 is 1 minute longer than season 1, because season 1 is slightly longer than season 2. Basically, if it is exactly 4.5 hours, which is what about all of them kind of average out to, then that is going to be the estimation I use. I may have a little update if once season 3 comes out and we can definitively say whether or not, but just wanted to throw that out there in case listeners were wondering how that was going to work, considering how fast we got to this other milestone.
Yeah, because I feel like during our last recording session is when we passed season 1.
A couple ago.
Yeah.
I believe it was, I can actually check. Hold on, listeners. Thank you for your patience. It was after episode 4.
Okay, and now we're on episode 9. Holy damn.
Yeah. Because episode 4 was current as of this current recording, our longest episode yet. Because that was Art of the Choice.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And so with Art of the Choice, that blew season 1 out of the water. So, but now 5A through 8 has gone past season 2.
Holy shit. Okay. Well.
Yep.
Time for character assassination.
But first, a disclaimer. In this discussion, we won't be summarizing the plot of the episode because we already did that. If you need or want a refresher, head back 8 episodes in our feed to our most recent This Week at Hilarshka for a full breakdown. This episode discussion will likely be all over the place, so strap in. You have been warned.
Okay, so it's not the first scene that we see Felice in, but since we talked about it in the cold open,
Yep.
I think we keeping to the theme of this, we gotta start with that.
Yep, I will scroll down.
So, the pictures that she's using of Wilhelm.
Yeah.
Which is also the pictures that Wilhelm looks at when he's laying alone in his room and texts his mom, "Mom, can I please come home?"
Yeah.
That's not the point. The point is, those pictures, he looks so physically uncomfortable. And the fact that she's getting, like, she's using those pictures to, like, sexually pleasure herself.
Yeah. Yeah. And see, you said it's besides the point, but I think you bring up a good factor that, like, again, to reiterate for listeners, who, I mean, the August assassination would have been a whole ass week ago. So in case you've forgotten, this is our defense or like explanation of why basically we dislike/hate Felice in this episode. And I think you're touching, Margaret, on a point that, like, we've talked about that scene multiple times with Wilhelm in bed. And we talked about it as his moment of biggest vulnerability, where, like, beyond, like, the opening scene in the bathroom, that those two scenes are the ones where we, like, see him totally alone and it's just us who gets to experience this side of him. And so as audience members, we know how Wilhelm feels about those pictures.
Yeah.
And so reflecting on this episode, and you think on this scene, and it just gets more and more honestly disgusting the longer you think about it. For too long.
I don't want to go as far as to say she's getting sexual pleasure from his discomfort, because that feels a little, like, sadistic, and she's not a sadist.
No, it is.
I just don't think she's aware.
Yes.
But I don't understand how she isn't aware.
Yeah. And it's, like, really hard because it's like, but also not even, to be fair, they don't know each other that well. Yeah. But, like, the person who's Wilhelm is currently basically only one person Wilhelm is close to, his brother, even realizes what the hell is going on in Wilhelm's head. I mean, his parents to an extent, but I don't know how well you can understand someone and judge them at the same time. So,
yeah.
And so I can't necessarily hold it against her for not realizing, because it seems like no one's realized. But what I can hold against her, I basically wrote, how much more than we already have should we unpack the unhealthy fixation on just the idea of a family friend?
Yeah.
Like, it's about status.
Oh, 100%. She's attracted to his title, not him.
Exactly. Like, she is but I wrote this in my notes because I'm borrowing your phrasing from an early episode. She's doing her thing.
I forgot I said that until listening to the draft that you just played of the trailer, and I heard that, and then I remembered reading your notes, and I was like, wait!
Yeah. So she's doing her thing to the Prince of Sweden.
Yeah.
It's not about Wilhelm. We've talked about this on the podcast at least once, about how we cannot believe for our own sanity and for our own suspension of disbelief that they were actually, like, childhood friends. Yeah. They knew each other in preschool and they are family friends. I think that is a very important distinction to make, because it's like it makes more sense to me how she could. I mean, I know this is not usually used in the context of men, but, like, she is objectifying him. She is objectifying his status and, like, the privilege and prestige.
Oh, 100%.
Comes from, like, being like the feeling of being attracted to him, I think.
Yeah. I think, yeah, she absolutely objectifies him in that she only sees the idea of him, like you said.
Yeah.
Like, he's not a person in the way that she's, like, quote unquote using him. He's an idea. He's a way to advance.
Yeah. Yeah.
Type of thing.
So how do you feel about going to the front of the episode?
Let's do it.
So the first time we see her, I said that she shows Villa a friendly face, but, like, he gives her pretty much the same fake smile as everyone else, which I think also, again, like speaks to the kind of relationship she has with Wilhelm, furthering our point. But I think it is worth noting that in her first scene, the scene is partly about her, but it's not from her perspective.
Right.
And so, like, taking that with a grain of salt, like, I don't want to judge her too hard for anything she does in the scene because, like, she's not the focus. But, like, my first question is, what does it mean to be modern nobility to you?
I guess when I hear that line, because August is the one who says it.
Yes.
So when I hear that line, I just think, because, like, nobility used to be just, like, the upper class that, like, had some influence over society.
Yeah.
So I don't know what Sweden culture is like. The way that this show portrays its upper class is that they still have influence over society. And so that's kind of how I see it. Like, her family is so wealthy that...
Yeah. I think it is quite likely that at least the Ehrenkrone side, like her father's side, presumably she got her father's name. I don't think the Ehrenkrones are titled. I, like, this is kind of based on information that we know that, like, the audience an audience who has only seen this episode might not, but I think calling her modern nobility makes me think of the transition that has not been totally completed in Sweden, but, like, is clearly a thing, especially with considering how many sons of CEOs go to Hillerska, that, like, there's been this blending of the capitalist upper class and the feudal upper class, where it's like the sons of noblemen are and the children of noblemen are going to school with the children of Fortune 500 CEOs.
Yes.
And so the modern part of that, I think, tells me that, like, she comes from a very wealthy fortune, but I don't think her family are noble. At least not going too far. Agree with that. At least not going too far back.
And that kind of ties into the line that Felice has when she's talking to Maddie, when it's like she's having that talk about status and the royal family, and she's like, well, August's kids won't be princes and princesses.
Yeah. And, like, it's not to say that a daughter of nobles wouldn't still want to marry into the royal family as badly, but it adds some depth to, and so it adds, I think, further understanding for me of who she is if she does not come from a titled family.
Yeah.
Because that means that she has no chance of being at all in line for the throne naturally.
Right.
And so the only way to break through what you, in a past episode, described as kind of noting that this isn't how the term is usually used, but you noted as a glass ceiling of, like, that space between the royal family and the rest of Hillerska. Felice's only way to break into that would be to marry into the royal family. And so on some level, like, her comments that she makes with Maddie, which we'll get to later, like, they are understandable. Like, they're practical. Yeah. Like, she's being pragmatic. That's the word I'm looking for. Like, okay, a small detail, going back to the beginning of the episode, because I didn't notice it when we were doing our notes for Art of the Frame, but I have to point it out.
Yeah, let's have it.
After Felice gets introduced, like, I think right after the modern nobility line, the camera starts on her, but doesn't hold on her at all, and then just moves directly to Simon before he starts singing.
Wait, really?
Yes. Like, we start centered on her, and then the center just shifts to Simon.
Oh, that's really funny, because that scene is, like, totally from Wilhelm's perspective.
Yeah.
Oh, hell yeah.
Like I'm not even kidding. Like, the camera doesn't move. Like, it just, like, starts on Felice, but just immediately starts moving. Like the camera doesn't stay still.
So good.
Like, yeah, I just need to do that.
Man, I can't believe we missed that for Art of the Frame.
Yeah. That's why, but that's part of what character episodes are for, is to like, with this narrower focus, like talking about the stuff we didn't get to in previous episodes. But I will say, starting with this episode and then going into future character episodes that listeners will hear in a few weeks, like I started realizing that when you focus on other characters that the scene isn't guiding you to look at, it's really interesting what a different and more layered version of the show you start getting. Because, like,
oh yeah,
taking special note of Felice in the choir scene, like, she is radiant. She is beautiful in this scene, but she also blends in.
Yeah.
Like, even when Vincent is heckling Simon, her face barely changes. She is letting this happen. And this might be a slight reach, but I feel like this is like, this shows me immediately that, like, she is someone with a desire to conform, which we've already we've already talked about that. But like from the first scene in which she is visibly seen, I feel like I can tell that she is part of the crowd, which I think is part of the reason also why, like, although Wilhelm recognizes her, his gaze immediately shifts to the person who stands out.
Yeah, in this scene we see that at least Felice is, like, at a minimum very complicit in what happens at Hilarska.
Yeah.
And is, yeah, like you said, definitely trying to conform. And I do think it's fascinating to me that Wilhelm's, like, focus immediately shifts to Simon, even though...
Because she fills up the entire frame when she gets introduced.
Yeah.
Like, she's introduced with all of the, like, pomp and circumstance of a character, like, honestly, of a love interest. Like, she is framed as a love interest right up until August calls her modern nobility.
Yeah.
Which, okay, this is an episode exclusively about Felice, and so I don't want to make it all about Wilhelm's perception of Felice, but, like, I think in not understanding how Wilhelm is thinking of Felice and comparing that to how she is thinking of Felice, I think for me really colors how I view her in this episode.
Yeah. No, yeah, that's really valid.
Yeah. Which I will get to. I mean, as I have for all previous character episodes, I do have a little conclusion where I summarize about all my feelings on Felice. So,
yeah.
All right. Do you wanna take point in the next scene?
Sure. Okay, so the next scene we see Felice in, I believe, is the horse scene when they're in the stables. I believe that's the next time we see her. And she's just, like, getting really frustrated on a horse, which, first of all, if you ride horses and you get frustrated at your horse, it's only going to get worse.
This is where Margaret...
Horse girl.
Again, yeah, Margaret reveals they were a horse girl. I was wondering when we get to it. Of course, it was the Felice episode.
Horse girl and proud. I see you dying over there. What was I talking about? Oh, horse girl. Yeah. So she takes all of this frustration that she has towards her horse and immediately, like, transfers it onto Sarah for no apparent reason other than the fact that when Sarah gets on the horse, they calmly walk away and are just, like, fine.
Yeah.
And the only, like, saving grace I have of Felice so far is that she does appear to feel remorse for taking her frustration out on Sarah once Sarah leaves.
Yes, I agree with all of that. Like, my first note, which, to be fair, like, I need to call myself out here. There are some reasons that I am listing for why I don't like Felice that hit a little too close to home. So the first note I have is She's not good at everything. So what? Like, that is what feel like is happening. Because, like, with the reputation that has already been established for us as the audience of Felice, the fact that, like, she is getting frustrated at, like, not being good at something, like, it immediately has me questioning, why is Felice so bothered? Like, what is going on here? Like, she is, like, distraught. Like, to the point of, like, just experiencing literal, like, distress and anxiety over the fact that her horse doesn't like her.
Yeah. She gets a lot of pressure from this facade that she puts up on social media.
No, yeah, I have to agree. Like, it's like, we see from the front that she's trying to put, like, she wants everyone to think of her as perfect. For whatever reasons, they're unclear. But I can't help but thinking those are the same reasons that, like, she's, like, short with Sarah for basically no reason.
Yeah.
Like, she literally grabs the brushes from her hands. And, like, as we said before, like, she treats her like a servant.
She does. If somebody was grooming my horse and I didn't like the horse, I'd be like, go for it. But I feel like Felice needs to have, like, control over this situation that she doesn't feel like she had during the lesson. Yeah. And it causes her to be very rude.
It does. But again, I do have the thing that you ended your kind of little brief on the scene on, like, which is like, she leans her head against Rousseau in like obvious regret. And it's the one thing that saves that in the scene. And I think that's save the scene for me, which, like, I think is a theme throughout. The one thing that saves this episode, this, like, episode for me, and, like, doesn't make me hate Felice as much as I hate August, is, as we've said time and again, she shows remorse. Like, she has a level of self-awareness that, like, we literally called August the Clueless last episode. Like, Felice knows what she's doing. She just, like, seems to be stuck in some bad cycles that, like, I can't stand right now.
Yeah. I'm fully with you.
Okay. I think we talked a fair bit about the scene with Felice and Maddie in Love Among Royals, which would be the next scene up. So I don't want to belabor our points too much, but I think that is when we get, like, a definitive sense of, like, who Felice is. Like we've been being shown, not told, and this is our only real bit of telling, even though it's it's still very implied. Like, she posts a completely fake post on social media that gets a hard eyes from Wilhelm, and, like, I believe that comes at the end of the scene, right? I'm pretty sure. I can never remember. Yeah. Because it's after Maddie leaves. Because we just cut straight to her doing her thing. And so, like, you start getting an explanation, but from watching so many reactors, like, meet Felice for the first time and hear that explanation, basically not a single one of them, like, turns or, like, changes their opinion on her based on that. Like, if anything, it just, like, more definitively, like, paints her as, if not a direct villain, like, someone who you're not really meant to like or root for in this episode.
Right. Yeah, I'd agree with that.
And I guess, to be fair, I feel like I keep doing this, and like, kind of almost using what I'm arguing is, like, the show's framing as, like, a reason for why we rank characters as a certain thing. Like, I think there are definitely going to be times, especially, like, in the future, where, like, we don't rank a character exactly where the show is pointing us. Like, this is our opinion, but I think pointing at the show's framing does help me, like, indicate that I'm on the right track here and that I'm not missing something.
Yeah.
And so I basically I grouped all the party scenes together, because I didn't have that much. I mean, I'm mostly repeating myself here, but, like, that line that I've talked about multiple times of like her hair needing to be straight.
Yeah.
I think that was the first sign to me in the episode, or like at least first clear sign that like she doesn't necessarily. This isn't this is an internalized ideology, but it isn't an ideology that is hers alone.
Right.
I wrote down like she has pressure from somewhere. Like,
yeah.
Like that she does not deliver that line in a way that makes it sound like that is a thing that she wholeheartedly wants to believe. That like her hair has to be straight.
And yes. And we don't know, like, that is an ideology that is pushed by society, and we don't know if that is purely coming to her from what beauty standards are in society and what she feels that
specifically
she has to embody, or if it's coming
let's name it out
from...
like for a woman of color. Like there's an expectation that women of color still adhere to Eurocentric beauty standards, which includes having straight hair.
Yeah. And it's not clear whether that comes from a specific person or society at large, but it is clear from the way she delivers that line that it is not her own words.
She is parroting that back.
She may have internalized it, but it didn't start from her.
And to kind of conclude this my section on like little like the moments from this episode that are from Felice is that like I can sympathize with her, especially in this scene, but that still doesn't change the fact that her perfectionism makes her treat other people poorly.
Yeah, I would agree.
Like seriously poorly. Like she isn't August levels bad, but like she approaches it at certain points with the level of cruelty that yeah
I would agree with that.
Do you have anything more to say about the party scene with Sarah?
This is also the point where she starts to come around on Sarah, which I think is interesting, and I don't know whether she does that just because she is drunk or if she does it because she sees that Sarah is still nice to her even after the shit that she has said to her.
Yeah. We've talked about this in Love Among Royals, but like I think like I talked about Sarah like confronting Felice with an ideology that she hasn't been exposed to before. But I think also just generally like if I remember right, I have something about this in Sarah's character episode, which spoilers for what we're going to tell you at the end of this episode that is coming next in the cycle. But I think it is a matter of Sarah is talking to her the way that no one else has talked to her. And Felice is actually responding to that, not with defensiveness, but like you realize that it's something that she kind of needed to hear, but no one felt like it was their place to say anything.
Yeah.
Or they're also bought into the ideology that they don't question it either.
That's also possible.
I think it's a mixture of both. I think there are some people I don't think everyone at Hilershka is as bad as Felice in terms of her perfectionism. But I think a lot of them would have grown up with her for long enough or known her just long enough to be like, or either not known her long enough or known her too long for this to either just be like who Felice is as a person to them, or or in the case of Maddie, they've probably only known each other a month, and like, who are you going? How much are you going to actually confront your roommate of a month about stuff like that?
Right.
You're not. You're not. The answer is you're not. Do you have any more thoughts about any specific thoughts about Felice before we conclude this out?
No, I think we covered all of my notes.
Okay.
Actually.
Now, as always, I'm going to give our defense of why we are assassinating Felice, and you tell me if I missed anything.
Alrighty.
I will note that now I'm pulling out the English major vocab, but this is just how my brain works. So please bear with me, listeners. I tried to include synonyms so I am understood. This is a character assassination in the aggregate, which means like when we average out all of Felice's scenes in this episode, I do not like her. I have far more sympathy for her than I do for August, especially by the end of the episode, because we understand her better. But one kind act does not erase presumably an entire month of taking her frustrations out on Sarah and possibly a lifetime of a weird obsession with Wilhelm that is simply not a good look. And to be clear, I do find her taking her frustrations out on Sarah and being cruel to people for her own bullshit to be like probably worse than obsessing over Wilhelm. Like, it's arguable, but like both of these contribute in almost equal measure to like me just disliking her on the whole in this episode.
Yeah.
Anything to add?
No, you always kill it with these wrap-ups. I never have anything to add.
I mean, it helps that we've discussed this so much off mic too, that like
yeah,
some of these thoughts I might have gotten from you, I just can't tell at this point.
I think we just think the same things at this point.
Oh, yeah. We agree on most of this show, which, as I've said to Margaret off mic, either makes this one of our best podcast pairings or a really boring one. I mean, you guys can tell this episode will not be coming out until like either late July or August. So,
August.
Sorry. So, I will say, I want to apologize to listeners now that I have realized that our August character assassination will not come out in August. But it'll come out right before August, and so it gets you prepared. Okay. And also, I don't want you to be doubly cursed. I don't want you to be in August and also have to listen to a episode all about August.
No, that's really valid. I don't want to be in August either. Sorry.
That took me a second. I am the aloe one here, and I don't know why that took me so long. We've lost Margaret, folks. They are dead.
I cracked myself up.
Love when we do that.
It was pretty good, huh?
Alrighty. You ready to take us out, Margaret?
I sure am. Thank you for listening. If you'd like to keep up to date with when we release new episodes and other pod-related announcements, you can check out our Instagram at People Don't Talk About. Our next episode will be a character standing where we'll celebrate all things Sarah in Season 1, Episode 1. So stay tuned. And with that, all that's left to say is...
Let's start a revolution, baby.